Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Looking for these better days.
It is Tuesday, August 11th. I'm Scott Seidenberg. Here's what you need to know to make today a better day. More injury news in the NFL could shape our opinions as we head into week one of the preseason. Plus, we continue our 32 in 32 NFL team previews with today's team, the Los Angeles Chargers. Michael Fiddle joins me on this episode of Better Day, presented by FanDuel, as our new Better Day podcast lineup kicked off this week. Mackenzie Rivers joined me yesterday, as he will each and every Monday, and Michael Fiddle on the show today, as he will be a part of the program every single Tuesday. Fiddle, good to have you on board. I know we talked off air about some week one NFL bets that we've already made, and we'll get to maybe some here on the pod, but just how much betting have you done already for the NFL season as we are in officially week one of the preseason right now?
Quite a bit, but also probably less than I normally would at this time. So I've actually gotten into the mindset of like churning bankrolls, very important to me. So I want to be betting shorter time turnaround stuff. So I do way less. Like I used to just when I was a high level hobbyist, I used to just get on the phone with one of my buddies every year, and we'd put like $1,000 each, and we'd go into various player with the most catches and most passing yards and MVP and offensive player of the year. We would just pick off all of the like awards markets that we wanted to think had good value, but also wanted to root for. And we both came to a consensus on. I've cut all of that like noise out, where I only do things that I think are like plus EV, and I want to hold on to my bankroll because I'm currently betting MLB and WNBA stuff, and then we'll have NBA rolling around too. So I do want to save a lot of the bankroll. So I've been more picky about futures, but I've bet a few win totals. I've bet a few make or miss playoffs. I have one player prop that I think is worth getting down on today as we talk about the Chargers. And so I've done quite a few. I've already started betting some week one lines, like we said. So I'm probably in, 10 bets, 10 units type of thing across few futures, win totals, and some week one bets. But again, I would say, so it's quite a bit for being still 4 weeks out, but it's also less than I normally would if I was just in hobbyist mentality.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you like your betting process, because I get this question a lot, and from Better Day members and from other people, about how much do you allocate towards the futures market? Meaning, we understand this is a multi-month investment, right? And so if you're going, it's like for me, I always say I don't do a lot of the season-long flat bets, as we would call it, like just because if I'm going to invest some money that's going to be held for a certain amount of time, I need a really good return on my investment, right? So, which is why if I'm going to invest in something that's not going to be settled for a couple of months, I look for like the awards markets, the plus money things that I'm going to get. That being said, when I do invest in something like a win total or something like a season-long prop that I feel like I have a better grasp on it than the market does, it's a larger bet for me than normal because I'm everyone's different. But I'm curious about your approach, because for me, I'm not just going to bet my normal unit size on something that's not going to be settled in a few months. And also, like, there's different ways that you can bet this stuff. I mean, I bet a lot of my futures plays on credit books, so it's a little bit different because I'm not laying it out. But then again, those aren't as trustworthy, as we all know in this business. We've had people disappear on us. We've had trouble settling. It's the give and take of credit books. But I do, at least me personally, and I'm curious about your approach, I do invest a larger size bet on something that's going to not settle for another 5 months. How do you approach that?
I could only imagine, Scott, that you have like some 28-1 Super Bowl ticket, like Seahawks 60-1 Super Bowl on a credit book, and you're like, do I hedge or not? Because I don't know if I'm going to see the money and then I'm going to lose money on the hedge. And
so true story, Fiddle. So true story.
It's a funny situation.
It was, and I've talked about this on pods publicly before, but it was the first Eagles run to the Super Bowl when they lost to the Chiefs. So what was
I was on them 40-1 that year as well. The first episode of my podcast I ever did, I was like, Eagles 40-1 is the play. And they lost, but I hedged it in the Super Bowl.
So I was on them 30-1. And I had a nice investment on them, and my agent disappeared by the time we got to the playoffs. And I talked about this on the pods that I was working on at the time. I thought, I thought I nailed the market. I thought I nailed it. Like I had it, the Eagles, like I was all over it. And literally every person that had worked with this guy never heard from him again. So
Oh God.
we don't know if he disappeared. We don't know if he went somewhere for an extended vacation. Like, somebody got pinched. We don't know. Like, it's just, he's gone. He's off the face of he's just gone. But that was one where, yes, I was looking forward very much to, once the playoffs started, I was going to kind of go against the Eagles in every single week to kind of just secure like a nice amount of money, because I was going to get paid a nice amount of money if they won. That never happened. So yes, that is
So
a
can
very,
I
very
ask you,
difficult thing to occur.
were you planning to hedge with that specific person so that you knew the balance? Like you can't go, like
No,
I know you're in Circa all the time because
yeah,
you're hosting Visa and stuff. You can't do it at Circa
no.
Sportsbook in that regard, because
Mhm.
what if you're losing your hedge and don't see the funds from the PPH?
Yeah, no, I was going to hedge with the book, so,
Yeah.
and I was
Yeah,
also
it's your
going to,
only option there.
yeah, and I was also like, that's the thing, like I was trying to get in touch with him because I was letting him know that, like
Right.
I was letting him know, like, hey, I know there's the potential for you to be out a lot of money here. It's not going to be this much money because I'm going to
Right.
be playing against the Eagles here. So we're going to kind of work things out on a week in, week out basis. And then I was even throwing messages out there like, because dude, I was going to win a lot of money on this. I was throwing messages out there like, listen, man, if it comes down to it, we'll work something out. I'll take
Yep.
less,
Yep.
like, like
Yep.
I'll help you out. But gone. Psh. So that's it. That's a major risk that you run when you're dealing with PPHs.
Okay, so as it relates to my, I appreciate the story. It's a good one. As it relates to my futures process, I actually am very different than you, and I think that's worthwhile to hear it from both sides. I am super analytical, mathematical in all of my process and approach to this space. So if I'm betting a futures bet, like I'm literally planning to and will process against what like the return on SPY was betting
Mm,
into like the investing into the S&P 500, right? So like I want a higher ROI than SPY and in just investing into SPY. So that's like kind of my barometer. I do play a lot of things that are like win totals will probably be what I play the most of, because they have the lowest theoretical market hold. Like you'll see, you know, theoretically like minus 110s on each side of a bet. And then you're betting into, a sub 5% theoretical market hold, where like that means for the listeners, what the book's rake rate is, how much the book is expected to take home. And so you're betting into a low hold, which means you're betting into, a more advantageous uh market for the player. That's like going to a blackjack table that or a roulette wheel with 3 zeros or just zero and double zero, right? The one with 3 zeros is going to have a higher rake rate, and the one with 2 zeros is going to have a higher RTP, return to player, in a casino rate. So I want to go where it's most favorable to the player. So I do a lot in the win totals market, and I also like those markets because they repopulate every single week. So it's like you could constantly hedge, double
yes.
down, create a middle, pivot. And
Mhm.
historically, that was more important to me than it is now, because with the prediction markets, you can, more directly, it was harder to hedge MVP back in the day because you're like, I'm in a really good spot with this ticket. But the next chance is like one of these four guys that I would otherwise consider. And you're like in week 6 or 7, right? Now you can actually hedge with no on a prediction market on the actual guy that you've gained value on. So I
Yeah.
think some of that stuff is less important now than it used to be. But I find myself playing into where the lowest hold is, which also is changing, because if you calculate, Matt Stafford 7% MVP with 94% no, it's still a 1 cent split. So that therefore the hold there is very low. But against sports books, I'm primarily a win totals person, and my goal is higher ROI than the SPY.
So let's talk about a win total here. I've already given this out on the show. It's one that we talked about when we did our 32 and 32 preview when we were doing the AFC South and we got into the Houston Texans. But the Texans over is one of my favorite win totals of the season. It's one that I actually invested in. I look at them in the trenches, and they are very elite. I look at the addition of David Montgomery and how they're going to be a more physical running team, which is going to take some pressure off of C.J. Stroud. And I still think, like, head and shoulders, they're the class of this division. Like, with all due respect to Jacksonville, I feel like they had a lot of turnover luck last year that's going to kind of regress. I understand the home field advantage might be a little bit better with reduced capacity in that stadium as well in Jacksonville. But I still think Houston's the class of that division. Double-digit wins I see more often than not. So the over 9.5 was one of my best win totals of the year for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I like backing a good defense, so I'm with you there. Just this backpack CJ Stroud and 4 interceptions in the playoff. Stroud, dial it back in. Think of the health of a lot of the skill players is very important to that team. Where like they do, I mean, you're the trench guy. They do have solid edges on both sides of the trenches. I think Montgomery will help. I'm actually a big Woody Marks fan as well. Like I think he's a nice combo back off of Montgomery, and then it's like Nico Collins is potentially. He's got like top 3 wide receiver in the league potential. Just Tank Dell returned strong from the injuries. They have a bunch of pieces where they could be really dangerous, and they could play in a weak division. Some of the teams came on a little stronger last year than we expected in the Colts and the Jaguars, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Colts regress significantly with Jones off the Achilles and the Titans being a mess. I also wouldn't be surprised if the Jaguars regressed a little bit too, because they feel like the second half of the season they played like a Super Bowl team, and so it's just like they got their peak for like half of a year.
Yeah. Have you placed any win total bets yet? You like one you want to give out?
I took Broncos over 9.5. I took the Bills over 10.5. I took the Lions over 10.5. But the one that I'll talk about is Chicago Bears under 9.5, which I think is the strongest one. So there's the 4 that I've placed. The Bears were number 1 in least offensive turnovers, number 1 in defensive turnovers, number 1 in net differential turnovers. And year over year, turnovers are considered not to be a sticky stat. Like they're one of those like game of inches. The deflection goes the wrong way. The fumble bounces the opposite way. So like leaning into turnover regression or like regression to the mean in that regard for Chicago, I think is really important. They play a first place schedule this year. I think there's more film out there on the Ben Johnson offense, and how he's going to lead this for Chicago. And specifically how Caleb's going. Like, I think Caleb got lucky to not have a lot of interceptions last year. And so if the turnovers kind of balance out a little bit where they don't dominate the turnover differential market and they have a harder schedule, then I think that they're in for some trouble. So I think a lot of people are high on the Bears because of the flashy skill player names and what they were able to show last season. But last season was against like one of the easiest schedules in the league that takes a strong turn this year. I'm high on Lions. I'm high on Packers. I think the Vikings will be better if they get their quarterback situation handled a little bit. So I think that division is going to be really hard. So I went Bears under 9.5.
I love it. And because I'm already over on the Vikings. So I think it's all correlated, and it's everything that you said about Chicago with the turnover luck. It's kind of what I said about Jacksonville. Like it's definitely due for regression this year. When you're looking at a team like we just said, the correlations, if you're down on Chicago and do you have to then up the other teams in the division? Like, I feel like if you have an opinion that differs from the market on a team, whether it's an over or an under, right? Don't you have to then change your opinion or your rating on the other teams in that division? Right? Like if like I was just talking about the yesterday, we were talking about the Laramie Tunsil injury affecting the Washington Commanders, right? And so if I like the Commanders now under 7.5, whereas maybe before the injury I was leaning over 7.5, well, where are those losses going to come from now? Like, do I then give the Giants another win? Do I give the Cowboys another win? Like, don't you feel like it has to be correlated? Maybe not necessarily, but maybe not directly, I should say, but maybe a little bit to change your rating on everybody else.
Right. There's going to be 6 games in there. So like de facto, there's like a 50% chance almost, or like 33% chance between those two that it impacts some divisional matchup where the wins or losses change from. So yeah, I do think so. I actually, because I was on the Lions over and the Bears under, I was actually going around trying to parlay them, because that's the thing that I would try and do. It's like, if
I
you
like that.
do get the correlation right, is there a place where you could parlay those two win totals and then plug the odds into just like a generic parlay calculator and see what kind of correlation tax you're paying? Like if you're betting into two -110s, and they're completely uncorrelated, you're going to get a plus 264 spit out for you. So like check what the each odds are. Try and do it where you're getting best price in market on both, or very close to best price, where you get best price on one and second best price on another. I wouldn't reach and do this at a book that allows parlays but has the worst price in market on both. No, okay, I wouldn't do that. And it's paying a big correlation tax. I wouldn't do that. But if you could kind of sneak around some of these like, that's potentially a big edge. And then I do think if you're going under on win totals, Scott, then I would probably go into, like, the rare time I would go into the alt derivative markets of betting win totals, and I would go further under, because if you're already low on the team, you're probably not baking in the chance for like catastrophic injury stuff. And so, because this is a game of attrition, I think the top 10 healthiest teams all made the playoffs last year. And so if you simply don't survive the attrition, then you're going to get whacked the other way. I think the Lions were a good use case of that last year, where I think they ended like 6-11. We're dealing with so many injuries. So I would, if you already like a team's 9.5 under for the Bears, it's like, well, shouldn't I also play under 7.5 or under 6.5? Because what if, Caleb gets hurt? Like, God forbid, but like, shouldn't you also take those risks? And play into that plus EV, because the market right now is pricing his injury risk into the market, but not much. So if the chance that one of those things goes unfortunately your way, but it's part of sports betting, right? Like injuries, same thing as betting an over and under on a prop. Like you have to calculate that into your projections. And so I would, if you're going to go under on a team, I would alt under. And if you like the over under on a team and you think it directly correlates with another division opponent that you like an over under on, I would parlay them.
And that's exactly what Mackenzie and I talked about yesterday with the Commanders in particular, as I was recommending the under 7.5, and he said go alt under 5.5. If the Tunsil injury is a big deal and it puts Jaden Daniels at risk coming back from injury to get re-injured, like the doomsday scenario is that the Commanders are a 4-win team, right, or a 5-win team. So and you will find more times than not when teams do either exceed their win total or go under their win total, it's very rare that it's just that half a win. Like
I think the average margin's been like 2.7 wins off the win total or something.
Yeah, more times than not, it's like 2 wins or 2 losses from what the Vegas line is to start the season. And speaking of a parlay calculator, it's one of the free tools that we have for you up on betterday.com. If you click on calculators at the top of the page, you don't even have to be logged in as a Better Day subscriber. You can use our calculators, including our parlay calculator, our hedge calculator, and brand new, Michael Fiddle, prediction market conversions. So you can see if you are looking at a prediction market and something says it's 74% likely to happen, well, what does that mean on my chart? Things like that. Well, you can look at our prediction market conversion calculator up on betterday.com. Just click on calculators and you'll find that free for everyone. Let's get into our 32 and 32 team previews of today's team, the Los Angeles Chargers.
Baseball fans, think you know who's hitting a homer today? Well, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with Daily Dingers. Joining the action's easy. Just make your free pick on who's hitting a home run in their game. And if you're right, you'll get a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. You've got nothing to lose and a lot to gain. And don't forget, you can make a free pick every day during MLB season. It's just another way FanDuel is home for home runs. So, are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com/Believe. That's FanDuel.com/Believe to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of the MLB. 21 plus in select states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino. 18 plus DC, Kentucky, Wyoming. No purchase necessary. Opt-in required. Bonus issued as a non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including any token expiration and max wager amount. See See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-MY-RESET. Call 1-888-789-7777. Visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org. Call 800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. Text HOPE-NY New York. Call 1-877-770-7867 in Louisiana.
Our 32 and 32 NFL team previews continue with today's team in the AFC West. It is the Los Angeles Chargers. Up on FanDuel right now, Fiddle, the Chargers minus 164 to make the playoffs. A lot of people expecting a big season out of Justin Herbert and this Chargers team. We look at their win total right now, 9.5, juiced at minus 140 to the over. They are currently the second favorite to win the AFC West division at plus 190, right there with the Kansas City Chiefs as the top favorite. I think the bigger story with this team, and we could talk about their trenches, we could talk about the players, it's what's this offense going to look like with Mike McDaniel as the offensive coordinator, coming over, former head coach of the Miami Dolphins, obviously in the Shanahan tree. We know about his accolades as a play caller. How do you think this impacts Justin Herbert and the Chargers offense this year?
Yeah, I think it's very exciting to bring over McDaniel. I think the offensive line getting healthy again is probably the biggest upgrade. I'm looking into a lot of the skill position players and the way that McDaniel's used them in Miami. A lot of quick out runs, like a lot of plays into the flats, a lot of sweeps on handoff. So I think there's a huge emphasis on like Omarion Hampton in markets because of the health of the offensive line and how successful running backs have been. I would say probably Omarion Hampton in a touchdowns market is where I would most look, because, you know, we saw how a guy like Raheem Mostert did, who's a pretty similar build to Hampton in the Dolphins years. And then they have a lot of weapons on the outside. I think some of them are a little bit redundant. I think is Keenan Allen still back there? Is Ladd McConkey? Is Aronde Gadsden? Like, I think some of those tools might be a little bit redundant in the playmaking, but I do think there's one in Quentin Johnston who has like a clear defined role on the offense where I'd be looking towards him taking off a bit as well. So I actually really like McDaniel joining that team. I think it's going to be a really nice fit. I think they have all the tools to do it, and I think there's certain position players that we could key in on that probably have the biggest jumps in success.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right on the head with the running backs. Like, I think more receptions from the running backs this year, and maybe it leads me to an over on the passing touchdowns for Justin Herbert, because in this offense, yes, like running the ball is important, and we saw what Devon Achane did in Miami, but he was also an elite pass catcher out of the backfield. And so I think that there might actually be more throws for Justin Herbert. Maybe they're just not downfield throws. Maybe it's a lot of quick throws for Justin Herbert in this offense. On a week in, week out basis, I might actually be looking at like completion numbers for Herbert.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, completion percent. Yeah, for sure. Total completions market.
That's what I'm saying. Total completions per game. And then, I'd be looking at Hampton. I'd be looking at the running backs, and playing the over on Herbert passing touchdowns, which right now is at 25 and a half. 25 and a half passing touchdowns is the season-long prop for Justin Herbert. In the trenches, as we look at the Better Day Trench Report, the strength of schedule that we put together. Now, this has to be recalculated with some injuries that are occurring around the NFL. But the Chargers, in our early preseason Trench Report strength of schedule, play the fourth most difficult trench strength of schedule. That means that in the majority of their games, they are outmanned, whether it's the offensive line or defensive line. And so that has me pausing on, the thinking that they're a 10-win team, even though the total is 9.5 juiced to the over. Where are you on the wins for the Chargers?
So I think the win total market is pretty spot on. I don't really have any edge here in any direction on the 10.5. I did a thing where I look at some of the, you call it a top-down strategy, where you look at where some of the sharper books are pricing this line, where the recreational books are pricing this line. You say, is there any actionable directional edge here? And so I looked at, one of the sharper books, and I saw that the under was less juiced, and the over was the under was a better price, and the over was less juiced. So it's like the market essentially was just a lower hold where like
Yeah.
the book was taking less. So it didn't provide an actionable edge in either direction to go pick off a plus odds under on a I think plus odds was over, sorry. Plus odds over on a recreational book, or the, little low vig under on a under wins on the 10.5. Sorry, I keep getting that confused. And so I do think that there's not really much edge in this win total, specifically using top down from like Circa and Pinnacle and those
Yeah.
sharper books for the NFL.
Yeah, like I said, there's no play for me. It's a lean towards the under, but then again, I always lean unders because it's more likely that these teams go under than they go over, barring, of course, injuries happen in the NFL. I think I'm really going to take a hard look at that Herbert passing touchdown mark of 25.5, and then just really, like I said, on a week in, week out basis, looking at the completion props and looking at the reception props for Omari and Hampton at the running back position, just because and maybe it's a touchdown, well, there's rushing touchdowns, so you can bet, differently. But I think there's going to be a lot of passing to the running backs here in this McDaniel offense. Do you have a best bet as it pertains to the Chargers?
Yeah, I like Quentin Johnston over 625.5 receiving yards this season. I think he's truly the only field stretcher amongst the wide receivers in this group. And I think, when I said is Keenan Allen coming back, he remains unsigned, so we're a little bit uncertain there. But
Yeah.
Ladd McConkey, Aronde Gadsden, like those type of players are just going to dominate in the flats. And I do think even pass catching out of the backfield, whether that's Hampton or the backup running backs, Kamani Vidal, we'll see who takes the lion's share of the backup reps for the Chargers. I actually think Quentin Johnston's the only field stretcher. So I would be looking towards his over. And if you break down like, oh, I hate, there's a common misconception, I think, Scott, of like, I hate overs on season long props. Well, can you start to factor in what the injury cost is priced at? Because at 625 yards, which he's completed over in all of his seasons, you divide that by 17 games, it's like 36 yards a game, right? So it's like there is a baked in what if he misses 4 games type of thing here, where now you're at 625 divided by 13 and you're still sub 50 yards a game for the field stretcher, who's going to have games where he puts up 135, right? Because he's going to hit two deep balls in a game if he stays healthy. So for this one, like I actually think the injury calculation versus what his likely role is on this team is skewed, where the over's worth it. And like I don't play a lot of these season win total overs. If you look collectively, there's like these studies that say, well, if you played every under, you would have been profitable. But a lot of those are like picking off best number in market on like recreational books and not widely available stuff. And, it's like timing the best entry point to market. A lot of those like big holistic macro statistics actually have a lot of flaws when you look into how the data set was pulled. So there's like pretty much a consensus around 625, some 650.5. It even stretches up close to 700. If you could pick off one of those 625 overs, that's a no-brainer for me. Quentin Johnston over 625.5. And for the fantasy folks, love his ADP and a draft position. So if I actually think he's gonna CLV his way up the fantasy draft board this season. We're like, I wish I was drafting next week so I could get some CLV on some fantasy players, but I won't.
I love it. I love it. He just has to catch the ball. That's been his one bugaboo here. And Chargers fans are just waiting to see him break out and be a big time receiver for Justin Herbert. Chargers up on FanDuel 17 plus 1,700 to win the Super Bowl, and Herbert 10-1 to be the NFL MVP. I think that if everything goes right for the Chargers, they win this division, obviously double-digit win team, threaten in the AFC postseason, but I don't have them above the Bills. I don't have them above the Ravens. I think in their own division, I mean, I kind of like the Broncos a lot in that division. And you know how high I am on the Houston Texans. So, okay, maybe I can get behind. If you want to bet them to win the division, you think they're a playoff team, which obviously they're favorite to do so up on FanDuel. I don't know if I can get behind this team to win the Super Bowl. I just don't see it yet here from Justin Herbert and the Chargers.
No, sadly, I don't either.
Yeah. Well, that'll conclude our 32 and 32 NFL team preview of the Los Angeles Chargers. Michael Fiddle, great job here on your not debut episode, but for the new podcast lineup, our regularly scheduled episodes. Moving forward, we of course will be doing like Monday Night Football recaps after the Monday Night Football game. Like we're going to record late night here on the West Coast. So after the Monday Night Football games, we'll have a breakdown of what happened, and then also early looks at the next week in the NFL. Maybe it's a Thursday Night Football look, or maybe it's just taking the teams that played on Monday night and thinking about how we could, react to those games and take advantage of maybe some market recency bias or injury news going into the next week. So I'm very much looking forward to that. You are the master of CLV.
That's probably my biggest strength in NFL betting is like most of my stuff is actioned before Wednesday, especially, I bet decent size, but not massive where I need to be waiting for the liquidity on an NFL Saturday or Sunday or or Thursday for a Thursday's game. Like that's not me. So what I'd like to do is get my bets in by Wednesday, really try and forecast the way the injury report's going to go, forecast the way these markets are going to shape, what becomes the sharp side, checking out some market signals for where liquidity is developing, where these lines are most likely going to move, what's the value of each point. So I actually think, doing the Tuesday release episode is going to be great because we can get in on some early bets for the following week that are going to be hopefully close ahead and finish with good ROI. Last year, the NFL market was incredibly sharp. Where if you got CLV, you did really well. 2 years ago, I think everyone was saying the opposite, where it's like, oh my God, all my good tickets lost. Even FanDuel 2 years ago reported $300 million of lost revenue in the NFL season. And the CEO of FanDuel called the results transient, where he said, we don't expect that to happen again. We think it was small sample size, and moneyline favorites won at an insane rate. That came back to reality last season. So hopefully this year we find it somewhere in the middle. But if you bet early into the NFL markets and close well, you should have like a 7 to 12% ROI. So that'll be the goal for us on the Tuesday shows.
I love it. That's what I was going to say. You are the master of CLV, and we're going to be getting CLV when we place these wagers early in the week, as we have, the market being set early, and we're going to be reacting early and being proactive, I should say, here on the Better Day podcast each and every Tuesday with Michael Fiddle. Make sure you follow Michael on Twitter at Fiddle's Picks. You can check out everything that he has to offer, the NBA Betting with Fiddle podcast for all of your NBA and WNBA analysis. I know it's a busy time for you as you're knee deep here in the WNBA season. Drama aside, Fiddle, but it's a fun time for you. And reminder, guys, the Better Day mobile app is available on iOS and coming to Android later on this week. You can get Android early access. Just reply to your newsletter email, and I'll send you the link for the early access for Android, but it will be published to the public later on this week. A reminder about that prediction market conversion calculator up for free on betterday.com. Learn how you can become a Better Day Insider or Premium member by visiting us on the web or on the mobile app as well. For Michael Fiddle, I'm Scott Seidenberg. Here's hoping you make today and every day a better day.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.